Algebra 1 Lesson 50, we are graphing inequalities, going back and forth between graphing the inequality and also creating an inequality from a graph. So when we look at these, remember when we have a less than or greater than sign, which are our first two, we have a less than sign, greater than sign, we use an open dot to do that. And then when we have a less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we use a closed dot. So an example of this is down below. We have x is greater than 3, so we put an open dot on 3 going to the right because we want all of the numbers that are greater than 3. In this case, it does not include 3. 3 is not greater than 3, which is why we have an open dot. We don't want to include that value. But if we had x is greater than or equal to 3, we would fill it in because 3 is something that satisfies this inequality. 3 is greater than or equal to 3. And so is everything higher than that. Now the reason that we can go ahead and graph these as they are right now is because number 1, x is by itself, and number 2, x is on the left side of the inequality. That's our goal. Just to make sure it's clear, top symbol is a less than sign. We use an open dot to do that. Let's see if my pen is going to work today. There we go. And then we have a greater than or equal sign, which means that is a closed dot. A greater than sign goes here. It also has an open dot. And then a less than or equal to goes here, and it does have a closed dot. Alright, so if we needed to graph x is less than 0, we need to check, is x by itself? Yes, it is. Is x on the left side? It is. So we can choose an open dot for this less than symbol, and I'm going to put it right on 0. And then I want all the things that are less than 0, so I'm going to use this arrow to show all of the numbers that are less than 0. Okay, another one here, x is greater than or equal to 3. X is alone on the left side, so I can put a closed dot on 3 going to the higher numbers, okay, so that we have x is greater than or equal to 3. Graph each inequality really quickly. When we do this, a good rule of thumb is to make sure that you have at least 3 numbers on here. So I have 5.8, that's my main point. And then I have maybe 6, 6.0, and maybe 5.6. I'm going to put an open dot here to the right because I want all the numbers greater than 5.8. V is greater than or equal to 6, so I have 6, 7, and maybe 5. I have a closed dot on 6, and I want the numbers that are greater than. Okay, next one. I have -2, -1, -3. Make sure your number line is in order correctly. We have a closed dot, and we want all of the numbers that are less than, going farther into the negatives. All of these so far, our variable has been alone and on the left side. But with this last one, I need to switch it around so that f is on the left side, 10 is on the right. And if I do that, I need to completely switch the sign and have a less than sign. So I have 10, 11, 12, open dot going to the smaller numbers. All right. Let's check a couple things. If we have this graph, open dot on -2 going to the smaller numbers, which one does this show? Well, I know it has to be a -2. We're not going to put something on 0. And is x less than 2 or is x greater than 2? Well, x is less than 2, so A would be the correct answer. We'll just do a couple more examples and then we'll finish. How do we write an inequality for this? Well, we know that something, it has to do with -100, and we have our variable x, and we are looking at the numbers that are greater than -100. We don't say greater than or equal to because it's not filled in. And our next one, we have x, we have something to do with 39, and we are looking at the numbers that are greater than or equal to 39. Okay. So just remember, when we solve inequalities, just like we solve equations, we need, let me say that again. When we solve our equations, our solutions include a graph, and we do those opposite operations just like we use with our normal equations. Graphs, make sure that you have the correct circle. It has at least 3 numbers, and we are shading in the correct direction to include all of those solutions. Because remember, inequalities don't just have one solution like an equation. They have infinite number of solutions, actually. All right, so just to practice putting our variables on the left, if I have 19 is less than y, I should write that as y is greater than 19. And same with -3 is greater than x, we now have x is less than -3. This makes it a whole lot easier to graph our inequalities. But maybe our variable isn't alone. Well, use your skills when we solve equations to get your variable by itself. So in this case, we add 1 and get s is greater than or equal to 5. So that we put 5, 6, 4, and a closed dot going to the right. And then we need to add 3 on this side. To get 7 is less than b, but we're not going to keep it like that. We're going to switch around to get b is greater than 7. So that we have 7, 8, and 6, an open dot going to the right. All right. Determine which of the values 0, 2, 4, 6 are part of the solution set of the inequality. Obviously, there are many, many more numbers, but of these, which ones are true? Now we could start off, there's 2 major ways to do this. We could start off by just plugging in the number, saying 4 times 0 minus 5, is that greater than or equal to 11? If we get a true statement, then yes, that value is in the solution set. But in this case, we get -5 is greater than or equal to 11. That doesn't work. Then we can try 2. 4 times 2 minus 5 is greater than or equal to 11. We get 8 minus 5 is 3 is greater than or equal to 11. That doesn't work. We keep going and see that 4 times 4 minus 5 greater than or equal to 11. That's going to give us 11 is greater than or equal to 11. That is true. So 4 does work. And so does 6 when we plug it in. Okay, we do see that that gives us a true statement. So 6 also works. But we do have another way to do it, and it's a little bit less work actually. We can solve for our variable. We have 4y minus 5 is greater than or equal to 11. We add 5 to each side, so we get 4y is greater than or equal to 16. Divide by 4, so we have y is greater than or equal to 4, which means that any of our numbers that are greater than or equal to 4 will work. So 4 and 6 are in our solution set. Okay. Once again, we can solve this and we add 4 and get y is greater than or equal to 6, meaning that only 6 will be in the solution set. Okay, and one last thing that I want to talk about with these type of equations, remember that if we have something like -2x is less than or equal to 14, when we divide by a negative number, a little red flag should go up in your head, because when we're dividing or multiplying by a negative number, we need to flip the sign. So in this case, we get x is greater than or equal to -7. Or if we had something like x divided by -3 is greater than 5, we need to multiply by -3 on each side, which, once again, we have to flip the sign to be a less than sign with our x is less than -15. So be very careful when you're solving. When we multiply or divide by a negative, we must flip the sign. Marie does not break until she's practiced playing the violin for at least half an hour. Write an inequality to represent the number of hours she practices before her break. Then graph the inequality. So we know that if we're thinking about this logically, we would say that she needs to practice for at least half an hour. So that's the least amount that she's able to practice. So 0.5 is a possibility, 1 hour, 2 hours, and so on. Meaning that x needs to be greater than or equal to 0.5. So that when we graph it, we would say Well, 0.5, 1, and 0. So we have a closed dot on half an hour going to the right. So she needs to practice at least those 30 minutes or more to be able to take a break. And the temperature on a winter day is no more than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Write an inequality to represent the situation and then graph. Well, if it can be no more than 40 degrees, then it could be 40 degrees or 39 or 38 or so on lower, which means that my temperature, x, needs to be less than or equal to 40. So when we graph this, we have our 40, we have our 41, and our 39, and we have a closed dot going to the left. Well, I hope this is helpful for your homework and for studying.